Rebecca, you and I actually first met when we were both part of the same storytelling show produced by Scott Whitehair, whom all of us are friends with. And I know that you do that not only in your sermons, but that you help other people in faith organizations use storytelling. What is that work like? Why is that so important to you to share that with others?
There are a handful of reasons I give, some of which seem really obvious, but then are also worth saying. I mean, I think that storytelling is one of the main ways that human beings carry and convey meaning. I think that storytelling builds connection. I think it builds empathy. I think that in a faith community, I'm really interested in um, people having places in their life to be vulnerable. I think that that is literally life-saving. If I think it's dangerous for people to live without any space in their life for vulnerability. Um, and so I always, when I teach storytelling, I always make the caveat, well, I try to always make the caveat that you don't have to be as extroverted or forthcoming as I am. Like, you don't have to be willing to tell the kind of stories I am. But especially in a faith community, I think it's important that you at least know you could be that vulnerable if you needed to, or that there are a couple of people with whom you could be that vulnerable. And so one of the ways we do that at Gilead, and one of the ways I do that when I teach storytelling with people, is by starting to flex that muscle. What feels vulnerable to one person might be quite different from what feels vulnerable to me, but it's a practice, and it's a you can see that, like, we're fine. I wrote recently about Gilead. We don't do trigger warnings at Gilead. For one thing, we don't want to be in the situation of mediating like whose story needs a trigger warning and whose doesn't. We also want to build storytellers who think with care about their listeners, and we want to build listeners who think with care about the community as a whole. And my ultimate goal for so many things in church in general, Gilead, is that even if people hear something that's like, that was a lot, I need to get off this Zoom call for a minute, that listeners can collectively hold a thing, and again, an individual might need to step away or give feedback. That one was pretty rough for me. Where, it's and especially in a faith community, you're in a context. It's different even than a storytelling show where you might be there with a bunch of strangers. I think you can receive care in a room full of strangers as well. Mm-hmm. But we have the capability to like check in with each other afterwards, Mm-hmm. And so I think to practice that vulnerability and to demonstrate that we collectively can handle it, it doesn't rely on any one individual just gritting their teeth. That it shows that vulnerability is like manageable. We can do it. And I was saying that we say that true stories save lives, or telling true stories saves lives. Mm-hmm. And I used to think that that was like a metaphor, or I even think I thought it was claiming too much for storytelling. But this piece around vulnerability is what makes it actual. That vulnerability can save lives, and telling stories is one of the ways to be vulnerable. So that doesn't answer what the work looks like. I mean, I travel to different congregations, sometimes nonprofits, and do day-long or 3-day-long workshops where we talk about this style of first-person true storytelling, generate ideas to tell ideas of stories that folks might tell, get some tools in the mix to start to build them. So it's not a workshop where people go away with a story in hand, unless sometimes we're building toward an event. I call that my Judy Garland business model, because we like put on a show. I go in and like teach a workshop, and then a few days later we do like a public facing event in their communities.